Welcome to the Real Estate Investing Podcast, where we help you unlock your potential freedom through land investing, real estate investing, and entrepreneurship. Hey everyone, this is episode 151 of the Real Estate Investing Podcast, discussing the reality of becoming a full-time land investor. I'm your host, Daniel Apke, joined again by my brother and business partner, Ron Apke. Before we get into the show, let's go over a question from one of our featured Discord members. Today's question is from George. George asked, I've been in your program for 6 months and I've sent about 30,000 mailers. So far, I've gotten 7 deals and I have 2 more in escrow. What could I do to get a better yield rate with my mailers?
Interesting. So 9 deals, 30,000 mailers. So we're a little over 3,300 mailers per deal, or George's. Um, I mean, trying to think, Dan, and it's just over time. Like, I'd be interested to see what your last 15, like, did you get less deals your first 10? Like, you should be around 2,000 to 2,500 mailers per deal. But that being said, like, you're making some good money, George. If you're doing things how we're teaching and getting size deals that we teach, you've probably, I don't know, a couple $100,000, $180,000 if you're making 20,000 a deal. You've had 15, 16, $20,000 in expenses for mail. So you're killing it. And that's what we always tell people, Dan. It's like, yeah, we get a deal for every 2,300 mailers. Most students do. And that's going to change over time in terms of your efficiency is going to get better as you get better at mailing, as you're more aggressive with pricing. But if you've done that, George, like, I have a hard time telling him to change anything. Like, you can evaluate your sales strategy, but other than that, like, keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, keep working. Like the easiest way to up that conversion and that yield is to get better at negotiations. That can, if you get one more deal run out of that and it becomes 10 deals instead,
Yeah.
then it goes to 3,000. You get 11 deals and it goes to, you start getting in that range that we're talking about. So it's just really like it's a big sample size, 30,000, but it's not huge. So I would keep doing what you're doing. You're still making money. Maybe consider adding texting follow-ups with your mail if you want to get more
Yeah.
people on the phones and more potential deals. Text follow-ups. So you sent the mail and you're texting to follow up, a couple weeks after that hits before their expiration date. But that's a good answer, Ron. Other than that, let's get into today's show. We're talking about the reality of becoming a full-time land investors. And Ron, full-time entrepreneurship's hard. Although there's a ton of pros on it, like you don't need to report to a boss, and we make more money than I could probably make in corporate America. The freedom is great. We always preach the freedom. But the cons are, and some would take this as a con, some won't, but the risk in the company lies on your shoulders. And that's kind of the reality of it, Ron.
Yeah, I think this didn't really hit me, Dan, like fully. Like, we obviously went so hard into land and we believed in it so much and it worked out for us. It didn't really hit me fully until, like, you start hiring and then you start having 3 people who you're responsible for, and then you're responsible for 5. Then you're responsible for 10 people. And oh, those 8 of those 10 people have a family. So you're responsible for 24 people or whatever it is in terms of putting food on the table, putting a house over their head, where you're not the company going out of business, the company failing, whatever it is, affects a significant amount of people more than just your employees. And that's when it kind of hit me, Dan, in terms of like, okay, like, we got to keep on working our systems. We got to make sure we're profitable. We got to analyze this, analyze that. That's like, not, it's not a con because I like that responsibility. I like having that. It drives me every day, I think. But that is part of it that will not necessarily keep you up at night, but it's going to be in the back of your head, I think. And you have a lot more overhead on a weekly basis.
Exactly. And even if you don't have employees, so that's when it hit you. Some people it hits, maybe they quit their job and they're like, wow, now my own life's on my own shoulders. I don't have any
Yeah.
employees. I'm making good money. I quit my job for land investing. Maybe it hit you then. It can hit you in different ways.
Yeah.
But, the fact is there's going to be a little bit of pressure on you. You can mitigate some pressure and risk by keeping your expenses low if you don't want to scale, if you don't really care as much about scaling, keeping your expenses low, not hiring W-2 employees. There's safer, less riskier ways to do it, but then the upsides are much, much less versus hiring and outsourcing and scaling and building systems like Ron's talking, and then your upside becomes infinite. When you're just working by yourself and limiting those expenses, Ron, and scared to put it back in, then your upside of the business model can, is really, really small. But what does it take? That's what I kind of wanted to get into, Ron. What does it take to become a successful entrepreneur, to become a successful land investor?
Yeah, I mean, you cannot be adverse to risk because doing this and quitting a job and becoming a full-time land investor, fully responsible for yourself, whether it's any entrepreneurship thing, either really, Dan, like you need to be able to take some risk. Like that alone is taking risk. But with the risk, there's a ton of upside. So I think people just who aren't necessarily scared, who believe in the process, who are willing to work hard and make it happen, and then can adjust along the way, Dan. Like, I think if you're just like set in your own ways and not willing to adjust, like maybe the business works for 12 months, 24 months for you, and then you refuse to adjust with the market, with whatever it is, and something can go wrong. You can end up failing, whatever it is. But I think the main thing is just being willing to take on that risk, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're willing to take on that risk through really like perser perseverance and determination, around like your end goal. You have your end goal in mind. You know what you want. And what you want, that reward is greater than the risk of getting there in my mind. And that's that determination, and keeping that in your mind is key to, like Ron said, facing your fear and facing that risk head on, because you know what you want. You know you want to get out of your job. You know you want to retire early, or whatever your freedom and purpose really is. I think that's one of the big keys, Ron, is understanding what you want, and that reward of being able to quit your job outweighs any risk of potentially getting there. And I think that's where the gap really is, and how you have to keep your mind on it. And it's not for everyone. There are people who are going to stay in their 9 to 5 jobs and do this as a side hustle around forever, which is completely fine. We're talking, what does it take, this title of this podcast, around what does it take to be a full-time entrepreneur? So we're going to talk more about those who are looking to get out or are kind of on that journey, Ron.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, like nothing's wrong with wanting to do this on the side and you love your job and you can make a couple $100,000 on this, maybe a couple $100,000 with your day job. You're really happy. You can retire early. You can, whatever it is. Like that's still going to give you a ton of freedom. But like the freedom people look for in entrepreneurship, like being able to wake up and do what you want with your day and not have to rely on other people. It's a freeing thing, like, Daniel, it's like an intoxicating thing. That is my biggest fear in life, is having to work for someone else. Like, I don't think there's anything else, like, that isn't, like, crazy drastic in my life, like, in terms of, like, what that could really like, having to work for someone else is a huge, huge fear, and that's a huge, huge, huge driver for me and everything I do. I assume it's similar to you.
Yeah, I don't think I'd hopefully ever let it get there. But I heard someone talking the other day, I think it was on Instagram or an Instagram reel or something, and they said how when an entrepreneur, a full-time entrepreneur who's been doing it a while, meets another full-time entrepreneur who's been doing it a while, and they both have businesses they built from ground up, putting in 80 hours a week, seeing all the ups and downs. He's like, his point was, it's an automatic connection, because it's like, oh, you get it. And I saw that over the weekend, Ron, and I was like, that's funny, because anytime I talk to someone who's a full-time entrepreneur, started a business, and hear about their journey, they get it. They understand the journey and the grind and the ups and downs. It's just like an automatic connection, and that connection wouldn't be there if it wasn't a grind and if it didn't take grit, because it's like, I'm not going to say I respect them more, but they understand what it takes, you understand what it takes. You guys just bond at a different level. I think when I talk to people that have taken something from 0 to $10 million, whatever that is, it's like, oh, they get it, they get what it takes, and it just creates that bonding atmosphere around. And that's literally because there are so many ups and downs in entrepreneurship. There are so many scary times, there's a lot of good times as well. There's a lot of hard conversations it takes, and that's just the reality of it. When you meet a very successful entrepreneur, they've been through that type of stuff, and that grind, Ron.
Yeah, I think when you look back, like after you've done it long enough, like you almost like forget all those things. And then like you see someone else trying to do it and like you remember, it brings you back almost when you see someone else like who's at that 0 to 6 month period of working for themselves. And like it's a whole different grind than it is 24 to 30, whatever it is. And there's different stages of entrepreneurship and building your businesses. But yeah, those like it definitely it's an instant connection, I think, like you're saying, with people who are also solely responsible, like their business is solely responsible for their income. Like that's how they make their money. They don't go to a job. And then it is like a connection thing, like you're talking about.
Yeah, and like we said too, like there are levels to it. Obviously, if someone with 100 or 1,000 employees is going to be at another level than if you're just responsible for yourself. But that being said, the stress levels and the difficulties can be the same. Like you're going to have just as many ups and downs. They're just different kind of extremes of it. But as you work your way up and hire your first employee, get over that hump. Then you hire 5 employees and 10 employees, and you start like the stress and the difficulty is always going to be there. It just kind of evolves in a different way. Those smaller problems aren't really a stressor to you anymore like they once were, but you have different stressors now, like you said, like paying for 24 people's payroll or whatever that situation is, or, if you need to lay people off, like that's the reality. You're in business in a sustainable business model, you're going to be in it 30, 40 years. There's probably at some point going to be some type of layoffs, and that's just the reality of it, or just those hard conversations that we're facing. And that's whether you're a one person job, one person company, or 100-person company, like those things are going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, it's part of the game. No matter what, whether in land investing, whether you're in IT, running an IT business, whatever the business is, like you're gonna have those same things, entrepreneurial things, business things that you run into on a daily, weekly, yearly basis, or whatever it is.
Yeah, so let's talk a quick little bit, Ron, on the overall like becoming. We're a land investing business, right? Let's talk about becoming a full-time land investor and what that kind of takes from a time perspective, consistency perspective on, how long, how much they need to invest and what that journey kind of looks like. We can touch on that a bit.
Yeah, and that's the thing about land, Dan. Like, you don't have to work. Like, the reality is, like, if you want to do this by yourself, you want to quit your job, you want to make $200,000 a year, whatever it is, you do not have to do this 40 hours a week. Um, it's just like, you do not have to do this 40 hours a week. It's very realistic to do it in less. But that being said, like, while you're doing land, if you're doing land with a full-time job, you want your land income. Like, you don't want to just randomly get up and quit your job. Like, that stable income is very, very helpful for building your land business. You want to do them side by side at first, kind of like what you did with drop shipping, Dan. Like, you were doing side by side, you started land and then you quit your job, and then it was just like just land, you sold your drop shipping business. Like, you do not want to just like, okay, I have a little momentum with land, let's get up and quit my job. Keep that going, and then like once you surpass your income with land, then that might be a time to take that step forward, that leap to being full time.
Exactly. And everyone's situation is a little different. Maybe you have $100,000 saved up and you can quit right now. Maybe you have no money saved up in a steady job and you need it to be able to get your land investing business off the ground. Everyone's situation is a little bit different. Maybe you live in your parents' basement and have zero expenses, versus maybe you have a family of 10. So obviously, the family of 10, he's not going to be able to quit his job as early as the person who lives in their parents' basement with those zero expenses. So we're just kind of generalizing things here, Ron, but everything's dependent on your actual situation and your risk profile. Some people like to take more risk than others, which is completely okay. But you want to balance it because, like Ron's saying, you can use that insurance money. You'll need insurance, right? When you quit your job, you can use that saved insurance money and that income and everything else to invest $2,000 a month, $1,000 a month into your land investing business, Run. And that's what it's all about: setting money aside to invest in your business, building that business up as quickly as possible to make a good amount of money to where you're making double, triple, quadruple what you are at your W-2. And then it's just like, why do I still have this W-2? I'm barely making money compared to what I'm doing in land, Ron.
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it. Obviously, like Daniel said, excuse me, you need to evaluate your situation. Like, you got to understand, one, coming into land, like you got to know, like, this is my goal to leave my job within X. Like, I got to make this happen. I got to do this. And then like having that set in stone, I think is really important. But like you said, Dan, I think evaluating your situation, your circumstances, what you need to be able to quit, how much risk you're willing to take, because that's the biggest thing. It doesn't matter how much money you're making in land when you quit your job. It is a risk quitting your job. Like, it does not matter. Like, there is risk involved in quitting your job no matter what, because that is your stable income. And you could be 4xing your W2 job and you're still not comfortable with it because there is risk involved. because it changes the whole responsibility aspect of everything.
Yeah, all of a sudden, all the weight's on your shoulders. Maybe you don't want that. Maybe you wanted to be free and just do this and make side money, and you don't want to quit your job because now you have to support yourself, and that's just a mental barrier you'd have to overcome. So everyone's situation is different, Ron. But like, let's talk a little bit time frame, Ron. Like, what do you think? Like after full force going in day one, setting 5 to 8,000 mailers a month, Ron. When do you think is a reasonable amount of time to be able to actually quit your job? I understand you're going to be able to make money month 4, 5, 6, 7, but that doesn't mean you're going to be able to quit your job necessarily because you want to reinvest those profits back in and everything.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you obviously need to be able to pay yourself if you're in that situation. I think 12 months is very, very realistic. I'll be interested to see what or to hear what you have to say, but I think 12 months is a very realistic time frame. If you take everything serious, you push your education, you send mail, consistently send mail, and like you got to grind for those 12 months. Work. This is two jobs now. You have your W 2 job and you have land. Like you're trying to turn land into your thing, into your W 2, into your full time gig. You need to treat it as two jobs. Like you need to work 9 to 5, your W 2, 5 to 9 land, and keep on doing that for 12 months, and you will make it happen. I have no doubt in it.
Yeah, 12 months, plenty of time if you're dedicated to it. And our last podcast was on doubling your business, Ron. So listen to that podcast if you guys haven't, because there's a lot of good tips on there and how to double your land business through higher offers, buying higher properties, taking more advantage of your leads, getting more leads. We talk a lot about that, Ron. But 12 months, I mean, that gives you a lot of time to turn your profit, reinvest your profit, take money out, pay yourself, all that stuff. I think 12 months is plenty of time. If I was to start all over, and we're right now end of April 2023. Yeah, by early next year, I'd feel very confident that I could get there.
It doesn't take long to replace your income. Like it really doesn't. Most people are making whatever. I don't want to put people into shout, but most people are making whatever 80 to $150,000 to replace that. It does not take that long in land. It doesn't take that many deals. It takes 6, 8, 10 deals max.
Yeah, and that's probably on the higher end. 150 is a lot. I think that's like in the top. I'd imagine 150 is in the top 5%. 80 is probably a lot of people are making 80 and up, but I think what's the average now? Like
I
60,
have no clue,
65
honestly. I would guess, yeah, 60 to 70. I think people who come in with us, like, are probably making a little more maybe, but they're trying to get out of there looking to replace that, but yeah, 60,
and it
70. I
always
don't know.
depends on your age as well, obviously. But yeah, absolutely. That's all I have. You have anything else to add, Ron?
No, I think this is really good. Like, it's a realistic thing, guys. Like, you need to treat it like a business. You gotta respect it like a business. And if you're trying to do this full time, like, and you're trying to get out of your W-2, like, treat it like that, and it's more than possible with it, and like Daniel said, 12 months is a really, really long time.
As always, thank you for joining. Please do us a huge favor and like and subscribe our YouTube channel and share this with a friend. It really means the world to Ron and I, but more importantly, it could help change the life of someone else. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next episode.